Good afternoon. I'm Ryan Alcantara with Rossier Career Services, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to navigating the early years of your higher ed career, community college focus. We have a fabulous panel for you today, and who I will introduce shortly. But let me make some other quick introductions. First, I want to give Isabel Wright, the other half of the Rossier Career team, who's here, a chance to just say hi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy to be here.
I also want to acknowledge and thank Rossier alumni Stephen Lohr and Sarah O, who helped inspire the series and who have been involved in planning today's program. I will highlight that the next part of the series, which focuses on four-year institutions, will be Wednesday, November 4th at noon Pacific time. Steve's here with us here today. Steve, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody. Glad you're part of the workshop here, and thanks.
Wonderful. And now for our panel. We have three distinguished panelists who I will introduce quickly and give them a chance to say hi. Dr. Rebekah Blonshine, who's the Acting Vice President of Student Services at Compton College.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Dr. Elliott Coney, counselor and coordinator of Umoja Black Scholars at LA Valley College.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
And Christina Barrios, interim director, EOP, CARE, CalWORKs, NextUP, Guardian Scholars, and Dream Services at Long Beach City College.
Hi, everyone. Happy Monday.
Thank you so much for being here. So the first half of today's session, I'll give each panelist an opportunity to share their background and provide a kind of about 8 to 10 minutes to share their kind of initial tips for navigating the first year. The prompt for this introduction is having them share a little bit more about themselves and some initial suggestions on navigating one's early career. Specifically, based on those experiences, what tips and strategies would they recommend for navigating the first years of a career, particularly as it relates to identifying or defining your passion and identifying organizational fit. And so with that, I will welcome Dr. Rebekah Blonshine, who was recently appointed as Acting Vice President of Student Services at Compton College and previously served as Dean of Student Success for the past 5 years. Rebekah has also served as an adjunct counselor and instructor of sociology in the community college system since 2015. Prior to working in the California community college system, Rebekah worked at four-year institutions, including USC, Purdue University, and Michigan State University. She started her career as a social worker in children's protective services and foster care. Her work experience in the field of education includes academic advising, counseling, administration, and academic affairs and affairs, student conduct and judicial affairs, guided pathways initiatives, residential education, diversity and multicultural affairs, pre-college federal funded TRIO programs, and other specialized programs to assist low-income first-generation students in their success. As the first in her family to attain a higher education, she prides herself in being a product of the TRIO Upward Bound program and has spent her career paying that forward in helping other low-income first-generation students. Dr. Blonshine earned her EDD in educational leadership from USC and her master's in social work and bachelor's in psychology from the University of Michigan. Rebekah, pleasure to have you.
All right, thank you. So again, Rebekah Blonshine, it's really a pleasure to be here and to do something back with USC. I grew up in Michigan, so I have to kind of start telling my story from where I'm from. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Lansing, Michigan, which is a very working class community. Schools I went to were very diverse. So when I went to college, that was really because of the pre-college program I was a part of, because of being tapped into a TRIO program. So I really do owe a lot to the mentors from that program, kind of tapping me ninth grade. And the place where I did my pre-college program was Michigan State University, which I later ended up spending a short time working there. But I ended up going to the University of Michigan for college. So kind of scale back. My first story I want to kind of share is that my counselor in college actually, when I told him I wanted to apply to University of Michigan, told me it was a school for smart kids. And so he told me not to, he told me that it was a waste of time. And he also wouldn't give me the fee waiver to get my fee waived. And it was $50. And I know $50 might not seem like a lot now, but to my parents who didn't have money like that, and even though I qualified for fee waiver, the fact that he didn't give me that, it just kind of speaks to how there's so many people in our journeys that are there to just be blockers, like barriers. They're just like discouragers and not those people that encourage. So he was like the first one that I always remember him telling me not to apply, not giving me my waiver. But it was that program and my mentor from the director from my Upper Bound program that was like, hey, like, you've got good grades. Like, don't just like apply to Michigan State. You might be able to get into the University of Michigan. Keep in mind that even though this is only an hour away, I had never even been to Ann Arbor, Michigan ever in my life until I went for orientation. But I did get accepted to U of M. I got a full ride there because of, Pell Grant, all the financial aid I got because of my parents' income, and they really taught my parents about financial aid. So when I was, I always knew I wanted to go to college, but my parents were like, well, you're going to have to go to community college first because we can't afford university. And so I think that just like, people out there giving my parents the tools, me the tools to understand the system was very powerful. And yeah, like going to U of M was great, but I will share my second story about education. Was in my first month at U of M. My mom came to visit, and being at a school like University of Michigan was the first time that I had ever really, my schools were, they were mixed, but definitely majority minority schools. And so I'd never been like around, like in school or lived in dorms with like this many white people, like just being honest. And, but I just wanted to be friends with everyone. Like I always just, very open. But after my mom left for that visit and she brought baked goods to everyone on our floor, this was in the 90s. So affirmative action was a really big deal. And after my mom left, the girl who lived like kitty corner, she said, well, oh, I didn't know. Like, I was like, you didn't know what? Like, she's like, well, I didn't know. I just thought you were white. And she immediately started saying that I probably didn't belong in school there, that she was sure that I didn't have good test scores, that affirmative action was out of control. So it's really interesting, like being in a space like that where someone's just telling you to your face that you don't belong in a space of higher education. So it was really definitely, that's something that I always remember about my initial experiences at a school like the University of Michigan. And of course, like my initial reaction was that I wanted to fight her because that's just like those feelings made me want to like, oh, and then I realized like, okay, this probably isn't a good idea. But it really was something that drove me forward in just wanting to complete my education. When I went to Michigan, I really still had that thinking in my head that how cool that they let me come here, but I'll probably end up going back home. So once I started going through those years and I'm like, oh, I'm actually really going to do this. It was a pretty great feeling. Got my master's degree in social work. I always wanted to be a social worker. I did traditional social work for 4 years after I graduated from Michigan. And yeah, so did the whole children's protective services, foster care, very stressful work. But I learned so much just about our judicial system. And it was really good for me to do that as a young professional, because even in the stressful politics of the California community college system, I don't think anything was like that work that I did early in my career. When I started, my first job that I applied to in higher education was at Purdue University, and I was over like all the student diversity initiatives and worked in the diversity resource office as a coordinator. One of the big things that I was tasked with was creating like diversity training for all faculty and staff. That was a provost initiative. So that was a pretty cool experience, being a young professional. And then I ended up going back to Michigan State to work for another TRIO program, Student Support Services, because my mother had cancer. And then when she got in a good space and was doing a little better, I came out to California to USC in 2009, which is when I started the EDD program there. So I was at USC for 10 years. I directed Upper Bound program. I had a great experience in the EDD program. And USC was pretty good to me. I also did res life when I was there. So the first 2 years I lived on campus, which was great. So I did a lot of things to try to navigate not spending all of the expensive tuition at USC and get a lot of tuition remission, which was very helpful. And then while I was in the program, I really learned a lot about the California community college system. And I met a lot of really awesome people that were in my cohort. I loved it that the program was mixed with people that were K-12, you know, the community college and four-year system. So I just learned so much being mixed in my cohort like that. And I just started learning about opportunities. Eventually I started to adjunct at the community college in both counseling and then teaching sociology. So I did that at LA Trade Tech. And so that has definitely been like, it was like, okay, I want to move into this space. And I just will be honest that for me, it wasn't an easy space to tap into. Like, I'm not from here, but I just kept trying to build my network and figure it out. I interviewed for a really long time for a full-time in the California community college system. But the cool part was I loved my job at USC. Like, I was the director. I loved what I did. I loved the students that I worked with at the high schools in South LA. It was really my dream job, like initially. But once I felt like I outgrew it and I was really had my target on the California community college system, it was, you know, some people have those great experiences where they just get in right away. That wasn't my experience. Like I said, it took quite a while. So yeah, the interview process, I like to tell people that I met with, like, you know, all the California community college presidents at that time, because I made it to the finals a lot. So I definitely would start to experience like interview fatigue, you know, and sometimes I'd give it a break and be like, you know what, I'm not going to put myself out there for the next 6 months. Or sometimes I, you know, I take a break because I'm like, I'm not even going to try to interview, because if I get to the finals and don't make it, it's just, you know, it's just too much. So I would take like breaks from interviewing, but after 4 years of adjuncting and putting myself out there, going for positions in for full-time positions, I did land a dean position here at Compton College over 5 years ago. So it's been a wonderful experience. I never thought I would get a Dean of Academic Affairs position, but it's kind of, because it's called Dean of Student Success, it was such a like hybrid. There's so much into that position. So it's very interesting that I'm acting in student services right now, because I have a very blended background of both student services and academic affairs now. But I guess I would say that, you know, in that first year, my thing that I would say is you do have to kind of know your passion of what it is that you want to do. Like, don't just throw your name out for everything, because that's going to get really exhausting too. So I really do try to focus on what it is that you're passionate about, that the kind of positions that you're trying to go for, because it really does have to be a good fit. Like, they have to want you and you have to want them. And it's kind of like, it has to be this thing that happens. And so my passion was really like helping low-income first-generation students. Like, I really always wanted to be in spaces where I feel comfortable and I care about the community that I'm serving. So I feel like this is a good place that I've landed. Yeah, and I know that when I'm like at the beginning of this school year, they have everyone sign up to do like shifts and help students. So I think you have to make sure that you're, especially if you go into administration, you know, you have to still do things that make you be able to go back into your why. Like, why am I doing this? And still being able to, because if you're just hiding in your office all day, like that's not gonna keep you motivated. It's just not. Like, you have to get out and walk around. And I loved at the first week of school, like I signed up for several shifts, but I'm just like walking around helping students. Don't tell them what my position is. Just ask them if they need help, because I know that they do. And there were so many students that told me like, oh, you know, me and my mom are, you know, we're both going to school right now together, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. They tell me their name and walking them over to the classroom, like, oh, I know this faculty member. I can maybe see if I can get you help you get an ad code. I'll talk to her for you, you know, like really doing all these little things. And one student, he got dropped off and he was, he said his parents had convinced him to sign up for the welding program. So scared. I saw his dad and his like younger sibling drop him off, and I knew he didn't know where he was going, and he just looked so scared. So we walked, but like I said, I love not telling people even who I am until we're like saying goodbye. And I'm like, hey, if you ever need anything, like this is my position, this is where I am. And he told me he was so scared. He's like, this is my first day. I don't know where to go. Like it's really cool to have those moments. So for me, I think that, you know, like I said, just finding a good fit is really, really important. Yeah. So I will let the other panelists share so I don't take too much time, but I would love any questions. So I hope to talk to you all more later.
Thank you so much, Rebekah. And I appreciate hearing your journey and certainly the challenges getting into the community college system. We talk a lot to students and alumni that are looking to pivot. So appreciate your candor in that, and anticipate maybe some more questions from the audiences as we get into the Q&A portion. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Elliott Coney. He's a versatile, equity-minded community college advocate and Black student success subject matter expert. He has achieved demonstrative success in cultivating Black serving institutions and programs with specialization in supporting and engaging underrepresented, racially minoritized, and at-risk K-16 student populations. As a justice impacted and first-generation graduate from South Central Los Angeles, he is student-first oriented with special interest in collegiate access, transition, and success of Black and African American students in higher education. His educational background includes instruction, outreach, and recruitment, dual enrollment, special populations, learning communities, summer bridge, student success, and support programs and consultation. Dr. Coney has conducted, authored, and presented research on transitional challenges of African American athletes at predominantly white institutions and the administrative perspectives of best practice challenges for active shooter readiness in community colleges. Additionally, he has published works in the Journal of Applied Research in Community College on the effects of institutional services on the persistence of African American males. He is an alumnus of equity-forward institutions such as San Diego State University and the University of Southern California, PASA grad for us here at Rossier, and Hampton University, where he was also a student athlete. Beyond the scope of academia, Coney's greatest passion is his acclaimed role as a hope dealer, who, like the late Nipsey Hussle, believes that the greatest human act is to inspire. Given this, his future passions are to grow his consulting firm, Blackwoody, Vanguard, and support youth sports programs and athletes in his community with early access to academic readiness through community college, general education coursework as the executive director of his own nonprofit. Elliott, pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. That's a mouthful. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I get to share my experiences and my learning with you all. You know, just a little bit about my background. I'm not going to really go into stuff that's kind of already been mentioned. But the main focus of why I'm here is because, again, it takes a collective village. I'm a product of the people that have served me, the institutions that have served me, and I like to be one of those individuals for you all and the people that come behind me. Um, South Central LA, individual, live literally 4 to 5 miles away from USC on Jefferson and Crenshaw. I always say I'm a Crenshaw baby through and through. So it really is something that galvanizes kind of my approach to the work. At a very young age, I kind of understood, the Black experience and the minority experience as well as my brown brothers and sisters who have had very challenges, had low socioeconomic capital, low, social capital to navigate this space. And I just wanted to be someone that I needed in my life to navigate, how I got to become a doctor of education. Athletics took me to Virginia. And I said that I'm kind of Crenshaw made, but USC polished. And I just think that the USC experience at Rossi really was kind of the linchpin to do the work that I'm doing at the level that I'm doing. Through my work after graduating Hampton University, I was a young Black male that thought the world was going to open up for him. I got a degree, Mom. I made it. I'm first generation, social justice impacted. My dad was in jail for triple life, wrongfully accused and later exonerated. So that was a big impact on my life as well. And like trying to be the person to make sure nobody that I knew had those type of experiences is why I do Black success work, why I'm a Black activist, why I look at myself as an abolitionist in this space, because we have to, decolonize our institution, decolonize our minds in the way that we think about the work that we do. And that's pretty much my impetus for being a Black success advocate. After I got out of Hampton, I actually am a unicorn by a lot of standards. I actually came through USC through the back door, I like to call it. When I got out, didn't get a job, interviewed feverishly throughout all of LA trying to get jobs that I thought I was qualified for as a young African-American male with a degree. And I bumped into someone that says, well, if you get a job at any of these local colleges, you can go to school there for free. And I was like, what, really? So I applied to any job that I could possibly get. Literally, I applied to the custodial jobs. I applied to transportation. I applied to campus safety. And I initially got hired at USC in 2008, right after I left Virginia in 2006 as a gate attendant. So like, as you guys drive through the grade at USC, in 2008, that was me. I had on my, Harry Potter scarf and my red USC jacket, and I was passing out parking tickets at a gate, with a college degree in my back pocket from one of the most prestigious HBCUs in the country. So that was not necessarily a humbling experience, but a little bit of a humbling experience because I never thought that I would be at USC without athletics. And the fact that I was able to just even get in, I felt very connected to the institution and the college. I started using my network and using the access that the gate provided to meet people and ask a bunch of questions. I met some amazing people that worked at the college. First, it was Kevin Kelly, who worked in athletics. And because of my athletic background, I got to do some volunteer work and internship hours with him in athletics. I met Corliss Bennett at that time, who was the director of CBCSA, which is the Center for Black Culture and Student Affairs. And when she found out that I was a Hampton grad and I had a degree, she had me to come talk to her. Through that connection, I met Kirsten Venegas. And then that led me to applying to, initially, I applied to Annenberg Communications to take some courses there with my tuition assistants. They helped me navigate how to start taking classes immediately at that time. And I took a strategic PR class. And again, I wasn't the greatest student. I always knew my potential, always knew that I can do the academic work, but just was really immature with the way that I approached my academics, particularly being an athlete and not really truly caring about, what I was doing outside of football. So now that I had this kind of second chance, I really wanted to put my best foot forward. Ended up getting an A in that first class, but didn't realize that, strategic PR wasn't really what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to combine athletics and entertainment, maybe becoming a intellectual property or sports agent. And so I wanted to get into sports management. So I ended up leaving the PR program and looking at Long Beach for sports management master's program. And then the director there said, well, USC has athletic director sports management program. I said, no, they don't. She's like, yes, it's in Rossi. It's underneath PASA, and it's a focus on athletic administration. So I was like, okay, I circled back, came in, met all of the folks here, and then Carolyn Sterling and Tracy Tombasi, and they all helped me to navigate the remaining 3 classes that I had a part of my tuition assistance. Once I was able to gain access into Rossier, I knew that it was for me. I think the first class I took in Rossier, which was like probably one of the most amazing classes I've had to date, was with Shafika Ahmadi, and it was the Politics of Difference class. And Shafika became, her and Dr. Cole, her husband, became one of the like real foundations of my work at USC. They really were mentors and advocates and sponsors for me, and they let me know that I had what it took to, you know, be a USC master's student and be a part of Rossier. So that led me to, you know, transitioning into more of the academic spaces. I worked in minority outreach and recruitment with Rakeem Hall. I did a lot of fieldwork hours in different spaces across the campus. And then, you know, I was really figuring out what I wanted to do. My goal since I left Hampton was to be a president of HBCU. I wanted to be like President Harvey, who was the president of the college that I attended. And I just thought that the Hampton experience and the HBCU experience of being the president was truly what I wanted to do. So that was kind of the impetus and navigation for me moving through my time there. And through my time at USC, I got connected to Dr. Harris and Dr. Luke Wood, which then led me to San Diego State after my graduation. When I was at PASA, I decided to do the thesis option because I was kind of curious about research, and I really was curious about my experiences and how those experiences as a football athlete at a HBCU might have been different than the athletic experiences of athletes at PWIs. So that was really a foundational piece for me to move forward with my learning, and really prepared me for the opportunity to potentially pursue a doctorate, even though that was not even on my mind, even radar at the time, because I really barely survived USC. Going from a historically Black college to being one of only like 2 or 3 African Americans in my program in a cohort of like 60 people was challenging a little bit. It was a little bit of a culture shock. Didn't really have high help-seeking behavior, was just trying to get it out of the mud and do it myself. But you know, once I started using these individuals, Kevin Colander, like all of the amazing faculty, Brandon Martin at that time, who was an athletic director and a professor in Rossier as well, like they all really like poured into me. They breathed life into my goals and my aspirations, and they showed me that it could be done. And through this process, you know, it led me to San Diego State for my doctorate. And I think that that was really the kind of crescendo moment of my academic career. Being very close to Dr. You know, Wood and Dr. Harris, who I consider brothers, was very groundbreaking and changing for, you know, my capital, my visibility, and being able to work in the lab with them at SEAL and really get more acclimated to research and qualitative and quantitative presentations, and getting on the conference circuit with them really opened me up to do more things in publishing and journaling and things of that nature. So like, you know, I often tell people that really, you know, my experience is truly the product of the people that I've touched, and it truly is. And that's why I want to be that person for others. As far as navigating the space of community colleges, you know, throughout that period that I just mentioned, you know, I was in and out of Rossier. I actually transitioned from transportation to DPS. So I worked for campus police for about 3 years, finishing my master's and starting my doc program before I actually left. I even had a short stint in proprietary education and for-profit at that time working for ICDC. I don't know if anybody ever remembers those commercials with Little Romeo. I did for-profit education for about 5 months, and it was the best, worst job I ever had. I figured out very quickly what I didn't want to do, and just the predatory practices of that space. So that segued me into the community college at West LA. And then unbeknownst to me at that time, I didn't understand the Title V regulations. And when EC had started over my duration in the PASA program, I didn't understand why good friends like Carmen Soto switched. You know, she might have had a different mentor for her to have her understand that an EC degree would allow you to be a counselor in the community college space. So I'm one of the rare people in the state of California that is in the majorly protected division of counseling as an equivalency hire. I had to, at that time, PASA was 2 years, as was EC, and there was a 4-class difference. So once I graduated and applied to the job at West LA and got through the process, I figured out that I needed to have additional courses to be able to work as a counselor. So I ended up spending a year and a half or a year at West LA as a counseling assistant with a degree in PASA, while I got other classes from UCSD as well as Dominguez Hills. So once I got those classes, I then petitioned for equivalency, and I was granted equivalency as an adjunct counselor. And I started in 2014 in the district at West LA, working in outreach and recruitment and onboarding of part of matriculation. And then that segued me into teaching, and then that segued me into my job at USC. Over that time, when I got out of my doctorate program, I actually applied nationally, which is something that I strongly encourage. Even though if you're not ready to move anywhere, just having the opportunity to interview in different spaces, to get different questions. I flew everywhere from Maryland to Wyoming. I drove to Barstow, went to Chandler Gilbert in Arizona. I was in Tennessee. I just went anywhere that would accept me. And I knew my resume was working because I was getting bites for interviews. In addition to that, I really leaned into my network. I think the best thing that you can always do is like use the people that are laterally adjacent to you all, meaning that the individuals that are already doing internships and field work at other community colleges, really leveraging that relationship to get in and get your foot in the door. Right now, whether you individuals know it or not, it's really a very challenging time for people to break into the counseling industry, particularly because a lot of the California community colleges are faced with tremendous budget and fiscal implications where, at least in our district, we've pretty much have like stopped all hiring of hourly and adjunct counselors for the most part. So that means that a lot of the ways that I got in are now not available to everyone. There are opportunities in areas that are going to have like federally funded or state funded funds, so like TRIO and those areas, EOP, but general counseling and faculty opportunities in hourly teaching and hourly counseling jobs are very, very restricted and now very, very, very more highly competitive. So with that said, my advice would be to spread your net as far as you can. Even throughout California, if you do have an opportunity to interview anywhere, go take that interview. Even if you're not good at interviews, use it as practice at very least. Get the interview questions, learn what people are asking, know what's important. And when you get out of those interviews, jot down immediately all of the notes from your interview, all of the questions, things that you thought that you didn't do good on, and then try to create prescribed responses to those questions and practice them. Because every time you get an interview, you want to have a database of possible questions that you're going to be asked. And then I would formulate answers and responses to those. And then I would talk to other counselors about your answers, like what could be improved, what could be strengthened, what shouldn't I say? And then that is kind of like the tidbit of that process. And then honestly, before we break into other questions, I think that understanding the politics of the industry is critical. We're at a time where we're so gung-ho in social justice and equity, but the reality is that on our campuses, what we're taught, we're really far ahead of the curve. And a lot of the campuses are still struggling in a lot of these areas. So you have this capacity or idealist mentality that we're going to step into these spaces and they're going to be like all about student success, all about equity. It's like, oh, I would just learn this, and we're not doing that. And like when you start asking those questions as an individual that's starting in this business, it becomes very challenging because you have to deal with the cognitive dissonance of what you're being taught is not what's easily being applied in the space. And because of the restrictive nature, because of the politics, because of leadership or, agendas, the population that you serve, particularly if they're an equity population, it's probably going to be very, very tough sledding, and you're going to probably hit your head on a few walls. So just make sure that you do have an understanding of when you're taking these internships to also ask questions about the politics. No one's going to tell you about it unless you ask about it. And, you have to be in a space to have those candid conversations so you understand how things work. You understand where the fault lines are, where the landmines are, where those grenades are, because even being innocent, you can get caught up in some stuff that could lead you to not get a full-time job, that could lead you to not, be associated well with the college or with the program. So just make sure that with your passion, and as I always say, I'm a tempered radical because I actually got pushed out of West LA College because I was kicking up a lot of dust, making it be known that I had issue with the way that we were doing things and not doing student success. What about these students? What about these populations? Asking those powerful questions. And I have learned better to not make statements or observations, but try to ask powerful questions in spaces where thought leaders are. Like, okay, we say that we want to be this or we're doing this, but what about this? How does this then apply to X, Y, Z? Where's the money for these things? And I think that once you start doing that in a way that isn't seen as confrontational, then it may go over better. But I'm here for questions, and I'm gonna definitely defer to Christina for her experiences as well. But as far as my overall experience, I think that my why has always been my father and my environment, making sure that with my survivor's remorse, that, you know, I wanted to be the person to help other people that looked like me, that came from where I came from, that didn't achieve what I achieved. I have people with, you know, both parents in their household that didn't get a bachelor's, that didn't get a master's, that didn't get a doctorate. So sometimes, you know, you kind of feel like you're brand new when you achieve these things, particularly people that, you know, you have day ones with who are not really in the academic spaces or not, you know, ascending to the degree that you are. So trying to reconcile that for me was trying to be a service to that, my community, and be a service to the people that come behind me. So that's all I got for now. And I'll wait for additional questions, and I'll pass it over to Christina and back to Ryan.
Thank you, Elliott. Appreciate that. Certainly a lot to think about, and I love the comments about mentors, and hopefully we can get a little bit more into that in the Q&A. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Christina Barrios, who serves as the Interim Director of EOP Care, CalWORKs, NextUP, Guardian Scholars, and Dream Services at Long Beach City College, previously serving as the Associate Director. Prior to LBCC, Christina was a counselor and dual enrollment instructor, as well as a success coach at Rio Hondo College and counselor in student support services at Cypress College. Christina earned her master's in counseling at USC Rossier, Fight On, and a BA in sociology at Cal State Fullerton, where she is also completing her EDD in educational leadership. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Again, happy Monday. I'm very excited to be here. So I grew up in Anaheim, California. I was gang impacted. I had witnessed my father shot when I was younger. And I was also a student athlete. So school was not for me. I hated school, did not like school. If you asked me if I was going to college, I didn't want to go. But the fact of the matter is, I became a teen parent. And that changed my trajectory tremendously. Prior to that, I was working at Knott's Berry Farm, and I was at Soak City, and I was cleaning up restrooms, and I did not like that. So school was my only other option, especially to care for my son. I was on welfare. I received food stamps, cash aid, low income, lots of barriers, domestic violence experiences, and that really fueled my will to go to school. And I enrolled at Cypress College, where I became part of the EOPS Care and CalWORKs program. I met mentors who seen things in me that I never thought I would see. I didn't think I had the capacity to be where I'm at now. As a matter of fact, as a student worker, I hated answering the phones. I would unplug them because I didn't know I didn't know what a customer service voice was. So it was a lot of involvement within my community college journey and a lot of intentional mentorship seeking, because I know I needed to be a good student so I could be a great parent and provide for my son. So that's how my educational journey really sparked. While I was at Cypress, again, I was as student worker, and I started to see how people around me championed for me, and I really wanted to do that for others. So initially, I wanted to become a probation officer. And unfortunately, because of my past experiences and gang impact involvement, at that time, there was not initiatives for formerly incarcerated, gang impacted youth. So I was not able to pass a background check to even volunteer for the probation department for Orange County, which I really thought just shattered my goals and my dreams, because that's really what I wanted. But in fact, it really redirected me to my purpose. And that was where I rediverted my whole journey to want to become somebody that championed for me for other students. So within that, I was able to graduate and transfer. As a matter of fact, I didn't want to transfer either. I didn't think I was capable. I had my managers at Cypress let me know that I needed to transfer. It was not an option. If I wanted to stay employed there, I needed to apply. So I applied and I transferred to Cal State Fullerton, where I just went in, went out. I did my sociology degree, and I really worked on what I wanted to do. And that's when I realized I wanted to become a counselor. I just didn't know how, because navigating higher ed is very complicated if you don't know the right people or the tools. I didn't know how to do an application. So I remember doing the application and not realizing I need letters of reference. So I did ask my mentors a night before, and they were not happy. And they completed them for me. And lo and behold, I got into USC, where my life really just transpired for the better. Being a single parent was very difficult. I was also commuting and trying to work-life balance, parenting. It's not easy. And I found my village at USC with not only within my cohort in the EC program, but with faculty like Dr. Venegas, who was there, Dr. Benuelos, and Dr. Munoz. They understood a lot of my challenges. And there was times where I didn't have a babysitter for my son. And I was struggling to see, am I going to class? Do I stay with my son? It was really hard. And they were so supportive. And they were the first ones to let me know, bring your son to class. We support you. My cohort mates who are like, some of them are like my family now. We have built that unity, and they have been my village to really help me throughout my challenges and all of these hardships. So I encourage you, first and foremost, build your village as you navigate higher ed. But within that, I did transition from a counselor to management during this time after I finished my after I received my master's degree. And I think that was a really hard transition because, again, I suffer with imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Can I do this? Because there's not many people who look like me in these positions. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of champions. And I went from faculty to management to where I'm at now at Long Beach City College as interim director. And I would say within that transition and having these people believe in me, it was also very hard to navigate, which segues into kind of my next points of make sure you find your passion when you want to be in these spaces, because going to work and doing the work and going to work and having a passion for doing the work you're going to do are two different things. For me, what drives me and fuels my passion is the fact that I came from the programs I oversee. I understand the barriers our students have. So it's not just a 9 to 5, or we know it's not 9 to 5, it's like an 8 to midnight job, but it's ingrained in me because I know how these programs can transpire and really evolve students' lives, and not just their lives, but their family lives. And I think also you need to find your mentors. So when you go through these processes of navigating higher ed, you need to be intentional of who you want your mentors to be. For me, I really honed out and strategically looked for people who I could resonate with, but whose position I want to be in the future. And I seek their mentorship out and I ask the questions. And a lot of the times people are very willing to be your mentor. You just have to ask. So I would say doing that, and then also understanding that within the transition, because a lot of times I get questions on how I transition from faculty to management. And I feel that the hardest part is the student contact is not as much as when you're in faculty. So if you do seek management, it's being very intentional on how you're going to make that one-on-one student contact. I know, Rebekah, you mentioned that you volunteer and you speak to the students. And for me, it's volunteering very much similar at our events for our student parents, and intentionally being out there talking to our students, because we don't know what's going on unless we make that connection, or you get a complaint and then you're like, oh, wait, how did this happen? So it's really being intentional and building those relationships with our students. But one of the things that I really feel that our president at Long Beach City College, Dr. Munoz, has ingrained in us as a culture at Long Beach is being your authentic self. I know that when I worked at other institutions, I didn't really know what that meant. I really felt like, okay, I need to look a certain way, talk a certain way, present myself a certain way. And when I came to Long Beach City College, I've been here for about 3.5 years. I learned that it's okay to be yourself. It's okay to share a little bit more of your culture and ingrain that within your professional abilities. And I really appreciate that about our campus. And then lastly, some of the things to navigate for higher ed for me that's really stuck with me and helped me professionally is a lot of the times there is so much work to do. And I feel that a lot of people want to talk about, let's do A, B, and C, but talking about it and bringing that action to the table are two totally different things. And as you navigate your higher ed career, I really encourage you to be part of that action plan and not just part of the suggestions. Really get into the nitty-gritty, put in the hard work. My staff really knows that I will never ask anybody on my team to do something I'm not willing to do. And that includes when we clean out our fridge, I will be the first one. Let's clean it out. Let's go make that smart and final run for our activities. Because I feel as a leader, and when you navigate through higher ed, people see that if you're willing to participate and do what the custodian to what the president of the college is willing to do, our faculty, any position, our student workers, it speaks volumes. So I really encourage anyone navigating their higher ed journey is to get in the trenches, really make yourself be seen, volunteer. And like Elliott, how you mentioned, equity, you know, we want to be those equity champions, but also put in that action so we can see those results.
Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you all three panelists, some wonderful stories. And I'll say, so we're going to transition to Q&A. We have a few minutes to take questions. I ask of our participants, if you're in a space that you can turn on the camera, we'd love to see your smiling faces. And you can put your hand up for a question, or if you want to put a question in the chat. I have a few. But certainly want to get the voices of our students, Rossier students and alumni into this conversation as well. So a lot of talk about, I'll just, kind of a theme that came up is, you know, identifying that passion. There's a lot of work that's involved, not just the long hours of the social justice and equity work that we're doing, but career-minded, like what's the next step, or transitioning into that next space. One of the messages I want to reinforce is that notion of not needing to do that on your own. And we talk a lot at Rossier Career Services about informational interviews. The Trojan Network is lifelong and worldwide, and taking advantage of that. And so I know all three of you talked on that a little bit, but if you've got additional thoughts that you want to share about, you know, building that relationship. Some people just aren't always comfortable, you know, initiating that mentor relationship. And so if you have any suggestions of how you navigated that in your first few years, that would be wonderful.
I guess the pause got me. The pregnant pause. It's just, I hate when it's quiet. But you know, so I mean, just simply, you know, I know I'm an extrovert, so it's different. I know there's some introverts on the call as well. I mean, we're just not in a space any longer where you can afford to not be engaged with individuals that can potentially provide you a handoff or an opportunity. You have to be intentional. I think that Christina stated it best. Like, you have to be very intentional and deliberate about the experiences, about the things that you're going to do to build those networks, to put yourself in a position to have those opportunities, and for people to know who you are. It's not who you know, it's who also knows you and what you know. So I think that is very critical. And people have to be able to stamp and vouch for your work. So be very intentional with these internships and externships and these hours that you have in the field work. Be very intentional about asking questions. Be very intentional about following up with people like myself, Christina, and Rebekah when we do events like this, because, you know, I'm also looking for a UPI right now, right? So I might be able to help somebody that is a counseling assistant. I know for a fact that EOP on Valley College is hiring for a counseling assistant right now. So those are things that I can put on your radar, and then I can share your resume if you send it to me when this call is over, right? So I can give that to the dean directly, and I can vouch for you as a USC alum. So those kind of things matter. And just, you know, continue to spread your wings, continue to engage in spaces where these conversations are happening, continue to, you know, make yourself visible at events, at colleges. And there's a bunch of different hiring fairs and things that happen throughout California. And then, like, I guess CCC registry is God and gold. It should be your Bible. CCC registry, you should be applying daily. I don't care where the job is. I don't care where it's at, but just continually throw your resume out there. If you're getting interviews, you know that your resume is working. If you're not getting interviews, then you need to make sure that you go to the the career office, and make sure that you revamp your resume to make sure that you're getting at least contacts and calls. That's all I got.
Thank you, Elliott. Rebekah, did you want to add something?
I just want to add that I talked about this when we were meeting prior to this event, but in the community college space, a lot of times when you go into administration, they'll hire like a private investigator agency to do your reference checks. So just so you know that, I mean, when we're talking about network, it's really, it blew my mind when I got into this space, you know, coming from 4-year, but you sign something kind of saying that they can talk to anyone about you. You sign off on that. And I know a lot of schools are doing that. So the power of your network, and it's not just the people that you're asking to be a mentor, but everyone that you interact with in every space that you're in. And this is all levels of positions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I was just so interested in how many people they contacted. They did reach out to my dissertation chair, which I was like, what? Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, which was Kristen Venegas, but it's just like, there's so many connections, even that we have from the panelists, even if we haven't ever met each other. When I was just on a call with Elliott last week, it's like, he's name dropping. And I'm like, I know so many of those people. And so you really have to just keep that in mind. You have no idea, even though these systems seem so big with over 100, you know, like the California Community College system, you know, from where I'm from, it seems big, but like it is so small, and you just have no idea that, you know, anyone that you come in contact with knows so many other people. And it really, you have to treat everyone, like the people who are cleaning the buildings to, you know, the president, CEO, like everyone gets treated with respect, because they will call anyone to ask about you, not just the people that you're putting on your reference list. So your network, you know, really matters in that sense. So that's just what I want to share.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebekah. Tony has a question, but one thing I just want to mention, because I did get a question in the chat about connecting with our panelists, and Elliott, you mentioned it too, of doing follow-up. All three of our panelists are on LinkedIn. If you have other ways that you want to encourage folks to connect with you, please throw that in the chat as well. But Tony, what's your question?
Thank you, and thank you to the panelists for making space. Hi to familiar faces I see in the attendees. I'm Tony. I currently work at Santa Monica College as a coordinator of supplemental instruction. I'm new here. I started in February, and this was like my pivot into the community college system, which has been an adventure. I mean, SMC has been in the news, so you kind of understand that it's been tumultuous. But prior to getting this role, I interviewed for an associate dean position, and I'm pretty much interested in the admin track in the community college system. And so my question really is aimed toward both Rebekah and Christina, about just like preparing for interviews for administrator positions, and really, especially as we transition. I used to work at USC, so transitioning out of the 4-year into the community college system, where assembly bills and funding formulas and things like that are really present in the way we do our work. What advice do you have for folks kind of relieving themselves from the intimidation of those admin level interviews with the president or with the deans of colleges, when you feel like sometimes they're speaking a language that's different from what you understand about higher ed, or maybe even have that imposterism of like, oh, I'm not ready for leadership in this system because I don't know half of what they're talking about half the time?
I can go ahead and chime in there. So definitely there's a form of intimidation, right? I think the best thing for me is I reached out to a lot of folks who were in my position or who supervise those positions, and just kind of say, hey, you know, I'm interviewing, you have any tips for me? And they'll do mock interviews. And they've provided a lot of insight, a lot of guidance. A lot of the times just re-looking at the job description, I'm like, I don't know what that means. Let me Google, let me kind of look here and there. But to your point of the intimidation factor, for me, what really has helped me is when I go into a room, I'm always intimidated. I get a little nervous, right? I think that's normal. But I'm like, these people literally put on their socks and their shoes the same way I do. They get dressed the same way I do in the morning. And they're probably stressed out trying to go to happy hour at 5 o'clock, just like us. So at the end of the day, even though it's the title intimidation factor, they're normal people just like us. And I just think if you carry yourself with confidence and good energy, things go right. But definitely reach out to people in those positions and seek their mentorship, or just say, hey, can we have a conversation? And then you're going to make a new connection either way. And LinkedIn is a great resource for that.
I would also add, like when Christina was talking about being your authentic self, like I think that is always the most important thing. If you really don't know something and you're in an interview, I will never forget that after I got this job and I met with Dr. Curry, went to his office, you know, after I had accepted the position, I came in, he said to me that one of the questions I didn't have the answer to. And he said, you know, I really liked your interview. He said, because the one question that you didn't have the answer to, because I didn't have that community college experience. So, you know, I don't remember if it was some assembly bill or whatever it is that they asked. but he was like, you know, you didn't lie. He's like, you actually were just very honest. I don't know this, okay? But these are my transferable skills. This is what I'm bringing to the table. I'm a quick learner. I'm this, I'm that. And he was just like, you know how, you know, someone like that, how many people that they see interview floundering and just wasting their time, you know, whatever. If you don't know a question and they're not going to hire you for that. But I loved that he told me that he liked that he knew I was an honest person. I'm not going to sit there and spend 2-3 minutes floundering over a question. I'm going to say, you know what? I don't know this one, but you know, this is what this is. I know I can pick that up. So that's my advice to that question.
Also wanted to take a quick stab. I sit on VP and dean interviews. I've also been offered dean and associate dean jobs in my time here. Every opportunity is not a great opportunity. Also understand why you want to be an administrator, because sometimes even with like classes and other things you can do, if it's money, that's not really it. You're not even as protected as much as you are as faculty in our system. So there's a lot of different tidbits that I like to, you know, impart. Also, I can assure you that these interview pools are not very competitive. A lot of times it also is the fact that people just know people. And I would say put yourself in a position to be in the spaces and at the tables. So I would reach out to Rebekah about those administrative dean and VP conferences, and I would make sure that you go attend those. I would start doing proposals to conferences so you can basically communicate what your subject matter expertise is in, what type of work you do. And a lot of the conference spaces are honestly where a lot of these job conversations happen in my experience. So that's kind of what I would say, kind of started paying attention to those bigger conferences where you have the SSOs, all the VPs and all of the presidents. And these are going to be opportunities for you to like people to know like what you do before you even get there. So when they do see your resume, someone's flagging it, someone knows that you're someone that they want to have at the college.
Great.
All of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to be mindful of the time. Kanika has a question. I'll have her do that. I know people need to drop off at 1 and we'll end close to 1, but I do want to offer a thanks to our panelists and give everybody a chance to do a round of applause for them. This has been absolutely wonderful. And just to remind folks that this is part of a series, an ongoing discussion. We'll be surveying participants to get some insights from folks on particular topics that you'd like to discuss in terms of that first 5 years in higher education. And with that, I will give Kanika a chance to ask her question. Kanika. Oh.
And I'm here just as long as you need me. I mean, I know I took a little bit longer on that first question, so I don't want to like, you know, punish anybody that has questions because I know I did belabor a little bit. So
no, thank you. Kanika, what's your question?
Yeah, quick question. I'll make it really quick. How do you figure out what your focus, or how do you zero in on your passion, especially after graduating a program? I just graduated in May, so I've had so much experience with different students that I don't really know which population I exactly want to work with, and that's made the job search a little bit difficult. I work at UCLA right now, so it's been great, but I do want to be more intentional about who I'm working with. So just wanted to know how you navigated that.
what are you doing at UCLA?
I'm in admissions and recruitment for the School of Music.
Okay. So, I mean, to Tony's point too, when you're coming from a 4-year, sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forward. And that's just because our institution and our landscape is very pretentious when it comes to community college experience. I don't know why, but in my experience, it seems as though like we tend to write off 4-year experience in our space. And I don't think that it's fair because I think those skills are transferable. As far as your passion, I mean, you know what you like about the work that you do. And I would try to find, if it's not a population specific, then transition into similar work, right? So for me, it would be outreach and recruitment would be an individual segue based on your skill set. From outreach and recruitment, then it may be something else that you can do within the umbrella of like another divisional area. If your job is to be a counselor, there's also counseling a part of outreach and recruitment, a part of Welcome Center, a part of first year experience in FYE. So those are like tangible things that kind of you can leverage right now if that is the actual goal that you have for your area. If it's PASA and not counseling, then of course I think there's administrative spaces to be directors of outreach as well. So I would transition in the closest thing adjacent to the pivot that you're making from the 4-year, and then work your way in from that angle. Because once you get in, if you have a counseling background, you can start teaching classes. You know, there's going to be adjunct hours that are going to come back. But right now, I think that the safest bet for our system is to be in spaces that are not counseling, just because of the financial issues and the fact that it is going to be so much harder to get those jobs to start out. So that's just my feedback.
Rebekah, did you want to add anything?
I mean, I would just agree. It really, when you're looking at a position, don't just apply for everything. Make sure you can see yourself, like really read the description. I think sometimes people can get just, they're just throwing stuff out left and right. Really read that. Really think about your own skills and the institution itself. Like, do you feel like you could see yourself there? Go take a walk. There's times when I was applying for a job in the community college. I remember one was at Mount Sec. I mean, I'm not from here, so I want to go see that campus, walk around, see if it's even a place I would want to work at. What's my commute going to be? What are these? If I'm walking around as a stranger, has anyone asked, anything? Like, I'm going into an office. Is anyone speaking to me? Like, you have to see if it's a good fit for you too, and make sure that you're tailoring your cover letter to that position, that you're actually spending some time on it. I mean, as someone who interviews a lot of people are just throwing things out there and they're making those very little mistakes that they haven't changed the name of the school that they're applying to. You think that you're going to get an interview. It's not going to happen, my friends. So I know you spent some time in the portal, and these portals are cumbersome and it takes a lot of time. But if you really want to put yourself out there for something, you're going to have to put some time in it and make sure that you're paying attention to those details. One little slip up like that and your application is out, period. Sorry, that's just the real. But yeah, so really think about it. Like, think about what you're putting your time and energy putting out there. And I feel like, it has to be a good fit both ways. Yeah.
One thing I also want to circle back to is understand the capacity of certain jobs. When you're dealing with special populations, that's not a 9-to-5. So I just want to make sure that we understand that first, is that if you're looking to work in Trio, Puente, Umoja, anything that deals with special population students, you're almost a 24-hour person. People are going to reach out to you because it is that type of work. So if you do want to be able to go home and not take your work with you, then general counseling might be for you. But if I just want to be real, because I kind of have an issue with people that step into the space knowing what it is, but have an issue with what it actually is. Because the burnout will be real. It's going to demand a lot of you. It's going to, require you to go above and beyond. But if you're really trying to be the person that you need for yourself and you were in the system, then that's what you're going to end up doing. And I mean, it's just the territory of the business. So to your question, Kanika, just really experiencing what you have the capacity for and what you really love, because my job, it is very demanding, but it doesn't feel like work to me. And that's the best part of my job. It's like, I literally will not leave, and I've been offered higher positions because, I'm really visibly out there, but I love what I do. I can do it in my sleep. And I actually just authentically feel like I'm cheating the system by getting paid to do what I do. Like, I feel like I'm stealing money because I get to come have fun with my students every day. I have like 50 of them in the space right now, making noise, and I get to help them, and I get to teach them, and I get to, love up on them. And so, I mean, it's just a great space. So, I mean, when you find that type of thing, when that why, like when your purpose and passion intersect, it's groundbreaking. And when you find that, it's gold in this space because it doesn't happen often.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing some time and dropping lots of knowledge here this afternoon. Really, really appreciate it. Encourage you all, whether you're students or alumni, in navigating that search process, reaching out to your network, expanding your network is really an important part. We at Career Services are here to assist students. So if you need another set of eyes as you're reinventing your cover letter, please reach out. And the points about just, spell check, all of that, like making sure those things are tight, identifying maybe a buddy that's going through a search process, and you guys can double check each other's work as you go through the process. Know that it takes, takes a community to do this, and you're not alone in your struggle. And I really, really appreciate that as a big message that our presenter shared. Christina apologized; she had to run to another meeting. I'll try to squeeze in because we've got a few people. As I did tell the panelists, I would ask one last question, and if you could stick around and answer, if you had the opportunity to give yourself the younger you in your first year in higher education, your first professional job, like what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I'll just say, like, don't always compare yourself to others. I think a lot of people in the space are trying to move too fast. You think you're supposed to have the highest paid job right away. You've got the degree, and now you're like, I'm gonna go for, straight up to the top. So I would just say, like, learn whatever position you have, learn it well, do it well. I like to say, put your high heels on. So don't be moving too fast. Learn the culture, learn the politics. Build that network. That's what I would say. And, like, don't spend so much time like looking at what other people have, how fast they might be going, what their trajectory is. You have to really just kind of, it's different for every person.
Thank you.
For me, I think it's twofold. I think firstly, always move with yourself in mind, understanding that if you're going to give a college or Uncle Sam 35 or 40 hours a week, make sure you give yourself some hours. Each of us have a skill set. Each of us have something that we've been doing that we're great at. Try to make sure that you move with the entrepreneurial spirit with whatever that is, and cultivate something for yourself. My piece now, because I'm working at a high level and people appreciate my work, is I'm consulting. I'm out now. I'm more visible. I'm doing things like this. So make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities to share your knowledge. Conferencing is something that I strongly suggest. And even if you don't want to do it by yourself, get with a group of people that you can present with collectively. And all of these things build credibility and agency that can lead to you being a speaker, a panelist, or something else that can lead to more optional money on the side. And maintain your freedom as much as you possibly can. Looking back at what I'm doing now, and now as I grow into this space of consulting, and now that I have an 11-month-old daughter, having freedom is more important to me than like really being at work all day. So I might even at some point like to go back to being an adjunct, working a 0.6 or something, and being here only 3 days a week, because I'm cultivating other stuff outside of these walls. So just those are and fail fast, fail forward. Make sure that you're developing yourself, making sure that you're taking advantage of every opportunity that you have to be ahead of the curve. And just be patient and know that everything is not going to happen overnight. But the more you spread your wings and the more opportunity that you have to like move out of this local area, you'll be great. I mean, one of the graduates from 2020, Blonshine Walter, had a conversation with me, and I'm like, apply everywhere. He came out of his first year and got a tenure track job at Mission up north. I forgot, but and he's a full-time Umoja counselor, right? And there's not too many people that step right out of a counseling program and get a tenure track job. So, lean on those people, lean on the folks that you're dealing with, and continue to, pave the way and continue to help those to come behind you.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much to our panelists, Rebekah, Elliott, Christina. Appreciate you spending some time with us. Thank you for spending a little extra time. And again, to our students and alums, continue to connect with one another, reach out to us at Career Services, and we're happy to assist you as well. Fight on, everybody, and see you soon.